Hello everyone, and we're back with the speed run series. More like a snail run, and the idea of this series is really to take you from the lowest ELO rating range and to try and help you understand the typical mistakes that players play at this range so you avoid them, and to take you along bit by bit in the speedrun video series to the high elos. So we're going to get up to 2000 eventually, and I'm just going to give you little tips to help your play, and hopefully you can use those bits of advice I give you to become a better player. Now at this rating range, it's really important to know some basic openings to pick up on your opponent's errors and not to lose pieces. And the basic opening I'm going to play today, because I do read some of your comments in the YouTube chat, I'll try to answer them one day, is the Jabava London system. I've done a video on this on YouTube for free, chessboard course, GingerGM course. I've done every kind of blooming course you can imagine. And I like breaking these openings down into stages. And stage one in the Jabava London is pawn here in the middle, bring the knight out, attack in the centre, and bring the bishop out to a good sensible diagonal controlling the center. Very important at the start of the game to play good moves that do have some influence in the center. The traditional way of doing that is by putting a pawn in the center. The hyper modern way is like b3, bishop b2, attacking it from the sides. Next, you want to develop your pieces and just get your king safe. So I'm not going to think into too many complicated variations. You don't really need to do that at this level, or even quite a long way ahead. You still need to be sharp, but here I need to get these guys out, and I'm just going to play my pawn forward one square, and that now means my bishop can come out. Now my opponent has played quite a solid setup that a lot of people do, but I don't know if c6 is really needed. Again, it goes back to those unwanted pawn moves. I think, what does that actually achieve? Are you really you're trying to get this solid center, but maybe you didn't need to put your pawn there. I'm going to bring my bishop out to the most active square. I always want to develop my pieces to squares where they have the most influence. And here I'm ready for my opponent to castle, where I might be able to get an attack there. And I've got to look at my opponent's last move and now decide what to do. Now in this position, there's many ways you can play this. I could drop the bishop back, and that means if my opponent takes the bishop, I take the h-pawn, opening up the h-file. That's the traditional way of playing. I'm going to play knight to f3, developing my last piece. And the point is, if my opponent takes here, I double my pawns, but I get a very nice control of the central square and a very nice square for my knight. The last thing I need to do in the opening is castle. I'm doing that now. And if we compare pieces, one of the great advantages of playing any London system is the bishops. My opponent's bishop there, disgusting. It's trapped behind the light square pawns. If you put your pawns on light squares, you want to have your bishop on the other side. My bishop is very useful, and my opponent's starting to lunge here with b5, but maybe without finishing her king safety. And again, I'm just going to play normal principle moves. I'm going to move my rook to a half open line, improving my rook. I've made this line open, and I might have some ideas against this now. Now this move seems very logical for my opponent, but why did she play b5? She's played c6, wasted a tempo with c5, and she's played b5. So she's wasted like 2 moves there. And here, well, this pawn is just very weak. And I'm going to take that pawn. I'm just thinking the best way of doing it. I think I'm just going to take with a bishop. And again, unnecessary pawn moves. Trying to do too much before you've castled your king, you're developed. You don't need to do these things. Now I'm going to take with a knight here, because it gives me ideas of potential sacrifices. Maybe the knight coming in here. My opponent has now castled, and I want to get the attack going. So I'm gonna swing my rook over to line up against my opponent's king there. I've got to move a little bit quicker, and I'm going to combine that. My bishop is actually quite happy here because I want to attack. When you're attacking, you've got to find a point of focus, and in this position, I might lose my bishop, but I'm still got a point of focus. Actually, this is maybe not a very good move because of e5. I didn't see e5. Okay, so I've maybe now going to switch back, because I'm not going to break through there. So I'm going to switch back now and just aim at another point of focus. But of course, you need more than one piece attacking that square in order to break through on it. And I don't know how I'm going to get another piece attacking that yet. But I do have very nice control on the dark squares. These squares all under control. I'm going to probably try to just play very simply. Okay, my opponent's threatening my rook, so I will step away. Quite a nice move, that one. Nice move from my opponent. I've got to watch out for breakouts, but I've got that under control. If my opponent can't break out, this bishop is bad. Maybe she should try to get the bishop out to a6. She's attacking that pawn again, so my opponent playing some good moves, but again, you've got to look at your opponent's moves, deal with the threats. So I'm going to deal with that pawn, and I'm also moving the queen there to keep this breakout move under control. I'm not worried about that bishop if she can't play this move. And knights on the edge of the board can be very weak, and here I can now try to take advantage of that with this g4 move. She's now got to find the move queen to g6, and here I could then go king h1, queen takes, rook g1, queen h4, rook here, and that wins the piece. And I did say calculation is not that important at this level, but I do have that benefit of calculation. But she had to try and do this. This is simply dropping a very important piece. Now, I'm going to bring this last piece in, and as I said, I'm going to speed up a little bit now. After each game, I will look at the most important mistakes that my opponent's making, and here I don't want to allow that one. That's a very good move because again she's trying to break with this one, and I'm going to play here, but then f6 I can come in. It gets a little bit complicated. You want to avoid complications when you material up, but winning one positions, everyone in a lot of chess books, one of the biggest things, I don't know if you guys and girls have seen this, you read a chess book and it says just a matter of technique when you get a winning position, and what the hell does that mean? When top players say, oh yeah, I've won a pawn, it's easy. Well, I never find it that easy myself, let's put it that way. Now my opponent had some other opportunities there, and she's played very well trying to get this e5 lunge in actually, and you can tell she's got some good talent. But now I've managed to take that pawn, I'm feeling quite safe. Now I could take that one with check, and I think I will, because I should also be picking up the bishop. Now there is a little bit of a problem with my back rank, but I got the g2 square, so make sure you're safe always when your king's a little bit weak. And I'm now thinking that my main plan will be to get my queen to f5, because I want to get the queens off the board to avoid any accidents. And again, when you material up, you want to try and make exchanges generally to make your job a lot easier. Exchange the pieces off, exchange down, exchange down into something a bit simpler. My opponent creating a threat there. It's a good move, and I'm gonna now, oh god, I'm gonna have to move quicker. Again, I'm aiming for this square, but that was a good move. So she's finding these little threats that are not doing damage, and this is a good way to play. And I can see that this is the difference probably with her grade and the grades below. And very important that I get my queen as centralized as I can. And we're trying to just get the queens off, and we now have got the queens off, which again, as I mentioned, I'm happy to have. I don't need to take the queen off straight away because it's not running away with the king there. So I'm going to use my best friend in the world. Wish I had some friends. I don't need friends, I've got chess. And we're going to do this. And I'm going to try to get this hold now. She's playing quick, which is a good idea from her. But I'm going for a mating net, which involves my rook trying to get to h8. But I have left myself a little bit short of time, and she can try to hustle me. So I'm going to bring all my pieces in as near to her king as we can. She's in zugzwang here. She can move her king, probably the best move. And then I'm going to bring my king in as well. Okay, this way we can take this. And I can't see a checkmate even if I take here, funnily enough. She could have gone king h6 there. That would have been the best try. And I'm going to use my d-pawn to try and die. Oh, that's going to be stalemate. How crafty was that? If I'd taken the rook, stalemate, and they... Oh, nearly stalemate, but I got this one next move, and that's the checkmate pattern I was looking for. Even at the end there, she put up a very good fight. So well done to my opponent. I think she fought well there, especially for a grading boundary. So the typical mistakes. So again, I would say I'm trying out different openings in this series because I wouldn't recommend you do that, but I want to, you guys play different openings, and I know a lot of you play the Jabava London, and this is a very nice opening to start with. I'd say if you haven't got a lot of time to learn chess, you've got family, kids, or like other things in life, pick a simple opening, and I think the London system is fine. This setup has it's very easy to play, and my opponent's first mistake I feel is c6. Why are you playing this move? Because you're controlling here. We don't need to do that. More important, get your bishop out, get castled. And then we have some more normal moves, and my next mistake was this b5 move, and again it's an unnecessary pawn lunge. And this was continued by this move. You can't play these very aggressive ideas unless you have those principled done. And later on, she dropped this piece, but she did do, as we saw, some nice attacking ideas. But the main problems are there: unnecessary pawn moves, dropping that piece, and some, these errors. So we're going to try this again. Same rating boundary. We're going to go for Jabava London. Bring the knight to c3. Now, against this, stage 1 in the Jabava London, pawn, knight, bishop, very easy to learn. But of course, we adapt our plans depending on what our opponents play. Now, I don't mind one pawn move here from my opponent because he's getting some control here. But as soon as I saw your pawn on g6, I love using Harry. Now, I could also play e4, and I'm very tempted to do that, but I'm going to play e3. And Harry will come, and now I'm going to go for this typical attack. And this is what I know, these basic plans, and this is what whenever you play any opening, just make sure you know the basic plans against your opponent's basic setups. And I could play bishop e2 to defend the advance here and not sacrifice, but I know that the move h5 is risky for white because I'm going to have to sacrifice the exchange. But I know from work I've previously done on this opening, I don't even have to sacrifice the exchange now, but I will, or won't I? I don't think I will, actually. I'm going to take my time in taking this pawn. We don't need to rush taking that one. So I could get my knight here, and I'd love to take it with my knight. Why sacrifice? I mean, sacrificing is a lot of fun, but you don't need to sacrifice unless you have a very good reason to do so. But okay, he's coming back to defend, and maybe okay, we're going to continue with the plan. I still think I've got pretty decent development, and I'm going to push in the centre with e4 now. Okay, my opponent playing quickly. We'll grab that one. At least I've got a big centre, and my next plan will be to get my last piece out and grab that pawn. So I'm combining different elements of the game. I'm making sure there's nothing hanging, that I'm defending everything. My opponent played nice aggressive move there, attacking the pawn on this square. I don't really want to lose that pawn, so I think I'm forced to move forwards here. There's no good way to develop this one. Sometimes your hand is forced, and again, this knight takes h5 is my main idea, but I could just bring my bishop out. When you control the centre, it's much easier to control the game, and you'll find this. This is one thing that ex-world champion Ali Eking did very well. Very good move for my opponent, this one, but trying to undermine my centre. But now I can develop a piece with check. It's not always good getting a piece into check, but this move has a lot of sense because after the knight comes here, I can use the pin on that knight. So I was tempting my opponent to play a move that he didn't want to play. If the knight had gone there, he'd have lost control of the d4 square. And now I'm feeling a lot better because obviously I can just take this one off and win a piece. Now, generally, when I've won material, especially a piece, I love exchanging queens. If I can exchange queens, I always will, because I take out the tactics. I don't really want to deal with any tactics when I material up. If I just play normal moves and stop any tactics when I material up, the game will win itself. That's maybe why people say, oh, it's a matter of technique. And okay, I'm going to just take here. I realise I'm going to drop this pawn, but I didn't want to take the rook because it looks like the bishop could come back. And again, by taking here, I'm forcing more exchanges. My king may look exposed, but there's no way my opponent can attack it. The knight can't come in. There's no way the rook can come in. I'm keeping an eye on my king though. No reason why I shouldn't take it, so I will. Okay, so we are exchanging more pieces, but I have to be a little bit careful, because if I take with the bishop, my opponent's knight comes to a good square, attacking my bishop, threatening to come in, and I prefer my opponent having the knight here, so I'm feeling like I won't take that one at the moment, unless I can see a good response. Now I could take and go bishop e4. That might be a response, and if takes, knight takes, check, and this is again calculation I don't expect you to do. It's something you're going to have to, you know, gather as you get better. My opponent might take on b2 and I lose another pawn, but it does make the position a lot simpler, because if I castle, there's bishop d4 check, knight f2 check, which is probably alright for me, but I don't really want to allow it. My opponent's pieces are quite active, so I'm going to give up another pawn. And one thing you should always look at doing when you material up is to give some material back if you can exchange pieces off further, make your position easier to play, take away the initiative. One way to take away the initiative for your opponent is to exchange pieces, and that's what I'm aiming to do. So I'm thinking here my opponent should take, come in with the knight check and take here. If my opponent comes in with the knight straight away, I will take that knight off, and as we're going to see, my opponent's not even going to win a pawn now, and I'm just exchanging those pieces off. Now I want to make more exchanges. The nearer to an end game I get, the better. So rook here looks natural. Do I bring my knight towards the center to push that rook away? Actually, that looks very nice. Am I castling here? Well, it's near the ending. I don't feel I will have to castle, so I'm going to try to exchange more pieces off. Maybe gives me a little opportunity to check. You shouldn't always go for the attack. You only go for the attack if the position demands it. And here, my opponent's king on h8. There's no way I can even attack that king, so I'm not looking at an attack. But a big mistake at this level is that loose pieces drop off. Before you look at your own moves, look at your opponent's last move and just see, first of all, can I take that piece? Yes, we can. If you can't, what's my opponent's idea? Make sure you're not going to drop a piece. But here, my opponent has fallen hook, line and sinker into knight takes d5. And I can make more exchanges now. I'll take this pawn with a check, and the check is useful, but I can now capture here. And I think we will, to keep it as simple as we can. The knight can drop back, and it's a matter of technique. And I'm going to just block the checks. My next idea, bring my rooks to the open files and get my rooks, try to get them into the 7th rank, find a target in my opponent's position here, h7, aim for that target, attack that target, 2 rooks on the 7th. Here I'm just going to set up a checkmate idea by now giving this opportunity. There's only one way to defend, king to f8. We now have an attacking position. One thing to consider in attacking positions, if you haven't got checkmate, is can I bring in any reinforcements to help that attack? So I'm thinking the only other piece, I can't checkmate with the 2 rooks. The only other reinforcement I can bring in is my knight, and by bringing it to this square, I'm going to bring it closer to that black king, and 3 pieces attacking a lone king is enough to win. And now by forcing the king away from the attack of my rook by checking it, I will be checkmating next move as such. So my opponent's mistakes there. Well, the main mistake, I don't like pawn takes h5. You want to keep your pawns quite solid on the area of the board you're playing. But my opponent did come up with some very good active moves here. Playing bishop here, f3 I'm not sure I really wanted to play, but I ended up playing it, but he's forced me to make this error. And then I came through the center. My opponent plays good aggressive moves that create threats. Knight here attacking this pawn, I have to go defensive. Pawn here attacking the center, but this check, really now I would have thought king f8 is the best move. Not ideal for my opponent, but at least he keeps his pressure against the center. And to be honest, as soon as I won the piece, this is how you got to win 1 positions. What did I do? I looked at exchanging as quickly as I could, as much as I could. I tried to take any counterplay away from my opponent's position, and I just swapped off. I read an interesting thing the other day. We're getting a lot of whites today, aren't we? Another white. And it was the psychological effect on chess players when they get a winning position. And the psychological effect is basically that a lot of chess players will be relaxed. They'll be like, yeah, I've done it. And their play quality goes downhill a lot. And one thing that you must know is that the psychological effect is you can't relax. Now my opponent here has played the England gambit, and this is one of those internet YouTube, I'd say YouTube gambits. Some YouTubers have made some really crap gambits popular, and it's really in some ways a bit detrimental for your chess to play these gambits all the time. You can play them for a bit of fun, but don't make them your main openings. I said this in a previous video, and what I meant by that is you're really serious about getting better at chess. You can't play stupid openings all the time. Now the England gambit, it's just not very good. I've taken a pawn. I'm going to develop a piece and defend that pawn. Now my opponent is going to try and check me over here. I've got to make sure I remember this. You've just got to remember the right ways to play. And I think bishop f4 is the main move, but I'm trying to remember the theory. Check. Then there's some line where my opponent will take on b2, right? And I know that I think Armand Hamilton played this a bit. Knight here takes, what is the move here? So bishop f4, I'm just trying to remember. So bishop f4, check. I can't block actually because my bishop, so I have to go back with my bishop. Queen takes here. And then if bishop c3, bishop b4 is the trick, right? Now check, bishop comes back here, takes here. Knight c3 is the best move, and that's the refutation. Okay, so I'm just trying to remind myself of the refutation. Otherwise I'd have played something a bit. You should always try to challenge your opponent's bad openings. Now the one move to avoid here is bishop c3, as that loses to bishop b4. But by bringing the knight out here, black is basically in a very bad situation. So it's really a one trick opening this. And again, it's okay playing certain gambits. I really think certain gambits are fine, and you can see here now I'm going to try to take advantage of my opponent's play, and by attacking here in the queen I'm already winning. But if you're playing dubious gambits, I mean the king's gambit you could say is dubious, but there's some gambits which are just clearly bad when your opponent has 7 moves to get a winning position against it. You just can't play them if you want to if you're serious about getting better at chess. What are you learning? You're just trying to get a tricky win in, and a tricky win, it's you know, you're just playing on tricks. It's really, I mean, you can do it now and again for a bit of fun. I even do it occasionally when I just want to have a bit of a laugh. But if you're really serious about getting better, it's one thing. I as a kid, my dad kept telling me, you know, I played the English opening, and he said, like, you can't, you know, lots of other players are doing all these tricky openings, getting better results. He said, don't worry, it will come in time. And it did. And these other players are playing tricky openings. They just got to a spot where they never got better. And if you're relying on tricky openings, like the Stafford in some ways, and again, I think Stafford's a really cool thing, real respect to... and what we're going to play against d4. Okay, my opponent's aborted anyway. Against the Stafford, I think it's a really cool idea, actually. I thought that was interesting. But as soon as you know how to... As soon as you start losing with it, it's time to move on. And maybe that's what I'm trying to say. And maybe I was being a bit too harsh on some of these openings that are coming up. But maybe the point is, as soon as you lose a couple of games against, you know, in an opening, which you know is probably not good, it's time to progress. You know, you can get away with it, but as soon as it starts going wrong, which will happen at some rating boundary, just move on. And I do think, you know, some openings, like I think the Jabbar of London is a perfectly good opening to learn, but the Royal Lopez is probably one of the best ones. And if you learn these certain openings from a young age, you're only going to get better, more experienced to them. Okay, now against this move, in my Jabbar of London course on GingerGM and Chessable, I say the best way to play is to harass that bishop with f3 and g4. And again, it's knowing these basic principles which will help you find the right plan over a board. And this may look a little bit crazy, but already I'm threatening to win a piece. So I'm expanding on an area of the board. My king is quite safe. I'm pushing my opponent backwards. And now that my opponent's knight is moving away from the center, I can even consider going e4. And you know what I will do? It's the most aggressive move. I always like playing the most aggressive. e3 was a bit tamer, but we have that similar pawn structure to what I had before. And this is a very nice square to develop my knight. And what is this move? Now this move is a nothing move. It's one of those moves where it's an artificial move that only helps me. If your opponent moves a piece into your half of the board and it's not threatening anything, I'm making sure it's not. He's not threatening c2. The bishop can't get through my pawn. I always, my first, like, if there's nothing going on, give it a kick. play a move with a pawn that kicks that knight away. You kind of make your opponent look a bit stupid. He's lost 2 tempo to help me control the square, and you can't lose time at the start of the game. Now I could think of punishing him with this idea, but I actually want to get my king safe first. Now over on the king side looks a little bit exposed because I moved my pawns up the board, so I'm going to move my queen so I can now go my queen side here. And this again, this positionally looks like a very aggressive move, but again you've got to be very careful making pawn moves. Why don't I like this from my opponent? Well, number one, look at his bishop, but number two, I'm going to be quicker castling, and he's made this very weak, so he's kind of really asking for trouble. Now 2 ways I can play. I can close it down when his bishop is then awful, and then try to open it with d5, and I think I'm going to do that because again I'm feeling that my opponent wants to play very active chess, and if you know your opponent's an active player, by closing the position you're going to really frustrate them, and they might really struggle to find the right idea. And now I feel that I really want to play this move. Why do I want to play this move? Because my opponent's ready to castle, and with his queen on this square, my knight is now coming straight into the middle, and here, nice move from my opponent actually, very nice idea. I take the queen, he takes on f3. I didn't see that, so he's clearly a gifted tactical player, but okay, I'm not that worried because my pieces are so well positioned. Just got to calculate now, what happens if I take the queen? So he checks here, I move my king, he takes here, and I end up taking that bishop a piece up. So very simple calculation. You've got to be able to visualize these things. He didn't even take my queen, making my job a lot easier. And now I'm going to do those things I talked about before, which is finish my development, get my king safe. That's urgent. Try to swap the pieces off, try to stop my opponent get my king castle. I'm not even going to think. Get that castle. Make sure I try to keep his pieces locked in, and he's played a good move there. But now I'm just going to try to get rid of it. I'm not even going to think. Remember, I'm going for that thing. Exchange it off. Okay, he's pinned me. I get my queen out of the pin. I also improve the pressure against some of his pawns here. Swap off. Swap off. I'm just going for exchanges. Yes, I'm very happy to exchange more off. Let's keep them coming. Keep them coming. You've only got 2 pieces left. You can't get them active, and now I can certainly think about bringing my queen in, making sure it's safe, threatening checkmate in the position there on g7, and he's tied down to defend. I'm going to bring my last piece in. There might have been stronger moves, but I like, if I can, bring in all my pieces. I'm going to use a little mini tactic here. His rook is tied down to the defense of checkmate, so he can't activate, take that rook, and he's going for a desperate last punt. Rook e7, rook here he can play, but that is the end, our only friend, the end. Okay, let's play one more game then, and we can see our rating. The next rating boundary is going to be a little bit higher in the next video. So this is a slow series, but I want to really take you. A lot of people play this rubbish. Is this the same guy I played earlier on? I don't know. Let's see if he now oh goodness me, I had this just before I started streaming. I had to started doing a YouTube video, and I had to start the video again because my opponent aborted when I played this normal move. Okay, but the next rating series will take you to the next level, and my opponent's queen is just a target. Now I don't need to start running around chasing because this is an artificial move. What I'm going to do is try to get my pieces developed. So I'm already thinking this is a good square for my knight. Well, actually, let's just bring it out then. Let's not. I was thinking I'm more worried about my bishop. Only because, do I put it on g7 or here? Now I feel that on g7 it has more effect on the centre. On e7 it doesn't do much. And on d6, well, it's going to be very hard to get it there and it be in the way of my pawns. So I'm just thinking already, where do I want to bring my pieces to put them on the best squares to get my king castled, and then once my king is castled I can start thinking about attacking him and playing some basic strategies, basic ideas to improve my position and threaten him. But I'm not doing that quite yet, and he's playing lots of pawn moves. This is a big error, I feel. You can't get away with just playing pawn moves. Another pawn move here. Yep, he wants to come here. I mean, I could now break free, but I've got to just think about what he's doing. And I think my knight is perfectly okay on h5. So I'm just continuing my development. And if he pushes on, I will bring my knight to h5. And here, now that I've castled, now that I've done my thing, now that my opponent has played this kind of weird setup, look at his pieces, they're really bad, his king is in the middle. Now I want to try to find ways to open up the position to start using that good development I have. And this break, you've got to look at pawn breaks that open things up. And this pawn break now seems to really help me. I haven't done anything wrong, it's not going to win me the game. I'm not thinking, oh, my opponent's played this outrageous plan, I need to punish him straight away. I'm just playing good moves because my opponent's plan I don't feel should work. Now I've got to be a little bit, he is trying to bring the queen over here and checkmate me, but I don't believe it. And I'm now actually thinking, okay, it's time to counterattack, try to get my rook in, get my bishop in, and I feel that even if he does manage to get some attacking play, my pieces are just so much better. Now I can take here, and if he pushes Harry, my bishop can always drop back. I think I will do that because it's very harmonious. And then I'm thinking about either coordinating my rooks or bringing my pawn up. Coordinating my rooks just with the queen coming here. But I quite like this move because I might be able to open things up here. Now attacking with Harry is okay. Now taking with a pawn would be a horrible mistake because then he may be able to get something down here. But my idea all along, and this is a very strong formation, is to play like this when everything is covered. Now I must now, because I've got full development, well I could get my queen out, but I'm really thinking I want to open it up. But let's see if I can use my pieces. And the knight in the center, well, this is an idea to target these ones. I do allow him to get rid of an undeveloped piece, but I gain another tempo. And this is where I'm looking at ways to use my lead in development. Now I could take here, but I'm liking knight here, where my knight can come in. Again, I'm looking at ways to annoy that queen. Let's do that. He has one check, but my king seems very safe here. He can't take here because of the knight. You've got to watch out for his tactics. He's a tricky little player, this guy. He's come back, but again, let's see. That's well defended. And I want to, in some ways, keep the queens on even here. But otherwise, I'm going to just revert to this. Let's keep it simple. Knight takes d3. I've got two pieces coming in. And here we go. And we can see I've won a very nice pawn. If the queens come off, I have two bishops, a pawn extra. My rooks want to come to the open files. I will play this one here before he gets a chance to castle. I'm probably going to put my other rook on the other open file. I'm not even going to calculate, so I don't need to. This must be a good position for my rook. And what's going to happen next? Well, he can, he's still reasonably solid. The knight can come here, which he didn't play. Then my rook would come in. Can I get my bishop in? Well, I'm going to play b5 because I want to open up the range of my bishop. And there's this pawn in the way. So I wanted to play b4. But he's allowed me to take here without having to play b4. Improving my position even more. And now I should be looking at ways to win. And this move, attacking the rook, should do the job. And I can now sneak in here. We've got the pin, the bishop's coming. My position is phenomenally good here. The major threat is rook takes knight, winning everything. But I'm going to win this one straight away. And now we go back to our old idea of simply exchanging everything off. I'm going to take here first because I'm a little bit greedy. Why not? Then given a chance, I'm going to take that one, bring my rook in, just try to keep everything sensible. I probably wouldn't have taken here if he could have activated his knight, but I've noticed that this knight can't activate because it's covered. Okay, so we're now going back. Let's get rid of that one, keep it as simple as we can. We're looking at threats. This one threatens the knight on d2, and here we can take that one off, take his last pawn off, try to get rid of the rooks, keep it as simple as we can. But this position, as long as I don't stalemate, which would be very embarrassing, is well, it's pretty easy. Let's be honest. So well, maybe I can even try queening another pawn. Should we try to queen all pawns? No, we're not. We're going to try to rook all pawns. We're going to try to rook it out. How many rooks can we get? Let's finish with the 5 rook game. Sounds like a kung fu movie. What's the 5 finger punch? No, the one finger punch. What's it called? The dim mark? The dim mark punch. You know, break the heart. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's okay, because I don't think I do either. I'm not really sure what I'm going on about. Okay, let's use the other one now. This is the kind of position, you know, you can kind of enjoy a little bit, because he can't take anything. There's nothing he can take at all. And my idea, I want to get the 5 rooks. 5 rooks. Give me 5 rooks. Okay, which pawn is going to land first? Well done, you checked me, sir. Well done on the check. I think old Harry... Oh, he's won a pawn. I'm only going to get 3 rooks now. I've lost a rook in the process. Disappointing. Oh, and he doesn't even let me finish it off. Okay, so what's my opponent's error there? Well, I kind of got the feeling he might have been a good player if he tried to use his pieces. He didn't use his pieces. Again, all the errors that my opponents have made have been quite basic errors against the fundamentals of chess, which is pawns in the center, know some basic theory. This is just a bad move. Control the center, get your pieces out, get your king safe, look out for dropped off pieces, look at ways to use pawn lunges to open up the position, and look at your opponent's last move. And you know, in this game, well, okay, he did some interesting ideas, but I think as soon as I took this one over, I've got to be very aware of what my opponent's trying to do. And he did come up with this idea of attacking me, but it was never going to be good enough because he doesn't have enough pieces backing up the attack. And this is a case of premature attaculation, a problem that many men suffer from in the chess world, and something they've got to learn to cope with and deal with. And they've just got to get their pieces out, really, to overcome this. And you can see here, he's trying to attack me, but he just doesn't have enough here to attack me with. So you've got to attack from positions of strength. Okay, well, thank you everyone. A bit longer than usual this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Please do. We'll be back with more content soon.